Hello there and welcome to Laurence Plays Factorio Planetary Pioneers, where we're back on Igrys for some more magic. In the last stream we saw how we managed to turn all the resources on this planet into magic glass and conductive bricks and so on, and more importantly we're turning the magic water, or magic fluid, into the 3 different types of crystals and then enriching some of those as well. Since then there has been some further expansion. The most exciting and relevant part of this is that we've managed to start making the mineral science packs, which is the science pack for this planet. And to make those you need the magic tesseracts, but you also need a couple of the basic science packs and some magic fluid. So we're fairly locked onto this planet because of the magic fluid. But we can bring in the various crystals from over here, and as I discussed last time, we can then turn them into tesseracts using these by combining one enhanced one or rich one with 2 normal ones, and then that just produces out a nice steady stream of the tesseracts. Those go in here. And then additionally, Mike has been building up the purple science packs up around here somewhere. Yes, over here. Here we go. So those take in much the same way they do on Norvis. They take in some rail, some furnaces, some productivity modules, and he's got those flowing up on both sides. And then those purple science packs can flow off down here and go into the production of the mineral science packs. Lovely. And one of the most important things that you can unlock with the mineral science packs is these science enhancer machines. And these are amazing because they have a productivity bonus of 150%, and that's quite a lot. And that means that every time we make a science pack, that is every time we run the recipe for one science pack and use the ingredients for one science pack, we end up producing 2.5 of them. So we've got a really effective productivity bar running through here. And you can see that's growing, it's growing more than twice as fast as the actual progress bar. So we're going to be producing a lot of extra science packs with this, which is fantastic because anything that makes science cheaper is going to be really, really useful. And so I think we're going to be exporting these off to lots of other planets because this is the exciting thing that comes from this planet, or it's the first exciting thing that comes from this planet. The slight tricky downside of it is these machines are fueled by the magic fluid. So you in order to make the enhanced science pack recipes, you need to have a flow of magic fluid going in. And that means that trying to do this on any other planet is going to be a little bit awkward because, well, Igrys is the only planet where you can dig up the magic fluid. And we've got a nice little mine for it over here, digging it up, pumping it down a pipe. Fine. So if we want to run these on any other planet, then we're going to have to take it away and onto those other planets in order to do so. Fortunately, that is certainly possible, and we can do that by making these hardened barrels over here, these strong barrels, which are made out of Cermite and rich magic tesseracts. We'll talk about those a little bit more in a moment. But then you can then fill those up with the magic fluid, and then that can be taken off, and we're taking these off along with the science packs themselves, and we're loading them into a couple of rocket silos over here. Hopefully at some point in the future, well, maybe we'll get slightly more science packs coming through and we'll be able to load 2 rockets, but we'll see how that goes. But yes, the magic fluid can then be loaded into the rocket over here, and we can take this off to other planets and use it elsewhere. Now at the moment we haven't set anything up to use it, we've just started producing it on this planet and then feeding it out and putting it into a rocket because we're pretty sure we're going to need it at some point in the future. But it is going to allow us then, with that and the science enrichment machines, it's going to allow us to make science packs much more cheaply and probably more quickly on other planets as well. And so that's something I'm really looking forward to, especially when we start getting out to planets where science is difficult. At the moment, the science packs on Vulcanus, these are pretty easy, and actually they're made in a funny machine, they're made in a foundry, so maybe we won't be able to make those in an enriched way, we'll have to have a look and see. But and also, these are fairly cheap to make anyway. They're taking in a load of molten copper, which just means lava, and then admittedly some of the tungsten as well, which does require actual processing and mining out of the ground, but it's not taking in particularly large quantities of that. So I think we probably won't bother for the Vulcanian science. Lignumian science packs are pretty cheap as well. All we require here is a slow trickle of gold coming in here and some steam, and both of those are pretty easy resources to get hold of on this planet. So again, maybe at some point in the future when we have loads and loads of this available, it'll be worth coming out here and using these. But at the moment, I think these resources are cheap enough that we don't really need to worry about it. Maluna 2, the space sciences are very cheap. We can get those just from crushing down asteroid chunks, and then we've got all the resources we need for that pretty much straight away. So again, making these is not particularly expensive, so once again, probably not worth it. But over on Norvis, where we've got things like the utility science packs, these take quite a lot of stuff. And at the moment, we're even short of green circuits for this one. But you can see along here, we've got quite a lot of fairly expensive things coming in here. So we've got the flying robot engines, we've got the blue circuits, which are very expensive. We've got low density structures, which aren't exactly cheap. And so I think this might be one of the first candidates for upgrading to use the new system. And what we'll probably do is leave this system as it is, but build an additional one, or maybe have an additional one underneath, where we prioritise the output based on whether we have any magic fluid available. So if there's magic fluid, then great, we'll make the yellow science in the science enrichment machines, and it'll be fantastic. We'll make 2.5 times as much for the same price. It'll be great. But then if we ever run out of the magic fluid because we've used it all up somewhere, or the logistics aren't good enough and that sort of thing, we can still keep these machines in here, still making the yellow science the old-fashioned way, just in a normal assembly machine. And you know what, we should probably chuck these full of productivity modules as well to get us that little bit of the bonus there. Because a normal assembly machine 3 can take 4 modules, and if we put in the tier 2 productivity modules we've got at the moment, that'll give us 24% productivity bonus. So it's nothing like as good as using the science enrichment machines, but it's still better than nothing, so we should probably go around and put some of those in, maybe in every single stage around here. Purple science is fairly pricey as well, not because any of the resources that go into it are particularly expensive, more just because it uses large quantities of stuff, so 30 rail going in here is a bit of a pain to make and transport around and so on. So if we could do this in the advanced machines, then again you would be using 2.5 times less rail, or we'd be able to produce 2.5 times as much out of all the resources that are going in at the moment. So that would be a huge step in the right direction and very worth switching over to. I suspect a lot of the future planets are going to have difficult science packs, or at least expensive science packs though, and so I suspect using the science enrichment machines is going to come in a lot more useful in the future on some of the other planets, but we'll be waiting to see what those are like when we get out to them. At the moment some of us have a little bit of an idea, having played vanilla, so we've been to Fulgora and Gleba before, but I don't really want to say anything about that because spoilers, and in theory we don't actually know yet, and the recipes might be a little bit different because of all the mods we've thrown at the game. But I'm sure there are going to be some planets out there where the science packs are a little bit more difficult to make, and therefore it's going to be very, very worth using the advanced machines to make them. Getting the science logistics up and running from Igrys was interesting and a little bit different, because in order to get stuff off this planet, you want to use the glass space rocket silos. And these are rather weird, because partly because they're slightly see-through, and even when the rockets take off, you can still actually see through them, which is very, very strange, because they're made out of glass. But that's a different type of rocket silo. And in order to research that, you need to do this research project. And this one is interesting because it only takes in the mineral science packs. So you can see that this is the Igrian research tree here. We've discovered Igrys, we've then learned about conductive bricks and magic fluid and magic tesseracts, and then the mineral science. And then that has allowed us to research the glass space rocket, where you make your rockets out of blue circuits, processing units, rocket fuel, and magic glass, which is a little bit weird and different. And that produces them 3 at a time as well, whenever it finishes. So you'll see when this finishes, well, it's gone up to 72%. I was expecting to go slightly more than that because it was producing 3 at a time. But this makes your rockets a bit cheaper than they would be if you're using the normal concrete rocket silo, and it means it can be built on this planet. But it means you can't get any of the science off this planet until you've done that research. And so we had to put down a small number of research labs around here to take in the first packs that were coming out of, well, not even out of here, these first ones had to be made in assembly machines in order to allow us to do the glass rocket research, which then meant we could start getting the mineral science pack off and take them over to Norvis, which meant that we could start then doing these ones, which as you can see require lots of the basic science packs and the Vulcanus one and the mineral one from Igrys. Similarly, the science enrichment machine requires a load of the basic ones and Vulcanus and Igrys. So we needed to get those shipped off back over to Norvis in order to be able to do these researches. Now, I suppose technically we could have shipped in lots of science packs from other planets and dropped them onto this planet in order to do those researches, but that would have been a little bit difficult, crazy. I don't think we'd have wanted to do that, and it wouldn't really have helped anyway, because it was this one at the beginning that was the weird one where we had to use normal labs and actually do some of the stuff on this planet that we would have liked to avoid, and that absolutely requires the mineral science packs. And so those are now being shipped up from here in the rocket up to the dynamic storyteller, which flies back and forth between Igrys and Norvis, and possibly owned by Vulcanus as well, for I'm not quite sure why, because it just waits there briefly. Maybe it's unloading or loading something. Maybe it's picking up the big mining drills on its way past. That's why it stops there. Then, like all of the other extraterrestrial or extra-Norvian science packs, they get dropped in on the landing pad here, where we're requesting 12,000 of each of the ones that's coming in here, and then they can be fed up along the belt round here, and then we've got another stack of them being built up in here. We're down to 883 of them at the moment, apparently, so that's not too bad. We can carry on doing various researches, and the low density structure productivity one we're doing at the moment doesn't actually use any of the Igrian packs, so fine, we'll chug through that one. But Eventually we'll start using them again in larger numbers, I suspect, so when we want to do more excitement and more magic. And so of course, once we had that research done, we were able to start using the science enhancer machines here to make our science the better way. Tristan has also put in piping to allow us to start making the red science packs with those machines. So over here, once we've got enough machines, we can then rip out all of these assembly machines down here and rip out the belt as well, and then switch over to using these machines, because the science enhancers are slightly bigger than the assembly machine, so we need to leave a little bit more space. But that means we'll just run a belt up the outside along here. We'll run some magic fluid in along the pipe in the middle, put the bigger machines in, and basically everything should just work from there. So it's not going to be too difficult as upgrades go. That will then take off a little bit of the expense of making the red science pack. So we'll use slightly less copper, slightly less magic glass, and things will be a little bit cheaper and quicker and easier. And also these machines run at a speed of, well, they run at a speed of 5 if you don't put productivity modules in them. These run at a speed of 1 1/4, so these machines are literally 4 times faster. So we'll only need 1/4 as many, which kind of makes up for them being a bit bigger because we won't need as long a column there. Still on the to-do list is doing the same thing over here with the purple science production, but there is a decent amount of space that's been left here. I think Mike has deliberately put these long inserters here to get the purple science packs out, and I think that might have been at Tristan's suggestion. So this is going to allow us once again to just replace these machines with the science enhancers, and again that'll bring down the cost of making all of these science packs, which would be quite nice because purple science, as I was saying earlier, is one of the more faffy and complex ones to build, even if you're using slightly funny recipes to make your rail and goodness knows what else. Earlier I touched on magic fluid exports and the strong barrels, and we're talking about how that requires rich magic tesseracts and Cermite. So let's have a look at those next. So the rich magic tesseracts, I sort of hinted at this a little bit in the previous video, I think, where down here we're making all the magic crystals over here, all 3 colours. Making the blue ones requires pulling in the blue crystals and some conductive bricks. That's fairly easy. We have a decent supply of both of those. So we're making our enhanced blue crystals. Lovely. They can go into making the tesseracts this way. Then over here we've got a similar thing for the greens. They require magic glass as their secondary ingredient. We don't have quite as much magic glass available. We might need to take a look at that and work out why there's a bit of a shortage. But that's allowing us to make a decent quantity of the green enhanced crystals. And in fact, we've got so many of those, we're piping some of them over around this way, where we can turn them into the magic tesseracts using the alternative recipe. But at the moment, we seem to have more conductive bricks of spare than we have magic glass spare, so we're mostly using the blue recipe over here at the moment. Then thirdly, we have the red one, so enhancing the red crystals requires Cermite, and this is currently being a bit of a problem, so we'll go and look at that in a moment. But in theory, that will then produce the red plus crystals, and then they can all be brought up here, fed into these machines. These take in 2 of each, and will produce a rich magic tesseract, which we can then pass up here and make into the strong barrels. I think we're going to require these rich magic tesseracts for a few other things later on, but that's kind of spoilers, so we'll look at that another time once we've started using them. So the next thing to talk about is Cermite, and Mark has built up a system over here that should in theory produce it. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be working at the moment. Now I'm wondering whether that's due to just because of when I've come along to look at it, or whether the system is broken. So Cermite is a bit weird. We touched on Cermet in the last video, and that's made by bringing in stone bricks and light oil. You mix them together, you make some Cermet. And Cermet spoils in 2 minutes into steel. So you can this is how Mike has been making steel over here in the past. He's got these machines over here making Cermet and then dumping it out onto an output belt here. And as it trundles along the belt, it gradually expires. It's only 2 minutes, so it's not too long. And then when it goes off, it turns into steel. So we've got a nice healthy supply of steel down here for making things like furnaces and rails and and anything else that we might need steel for. Great, that's working well. That's doing exactly what we need because we're basically making steel with extra steps. Over here on the other side, however, we don't want steel to come out ideally, so we're trying to avoid that. So what we're doing instead is we're then turning the Cermet into raw Cermite, and this is the first step of making Cermite. The thing is though that raw Cermite eventually spoils into cooked Cermite, I suppose is probably the best way to put it. However, the spoil time is 5 hours, which is quite frankly a little bit ridiculous. We don't want to wait 5 hours for our Cermite to be produced. Now, yes, okay, we could probably do something with that. We could have an enormous bank of chests and just have loads and loads of Cermite sitting in it, gradually spoiling until it eventually turns into the cooked Cermite or the spoiled Cermite, and we can then take it away down the belt here and bring it into the rest of the factory to be used for Cermitical things. However, 5 hours, that's a very long time. And now, yes, we could set up a system where it's continually being fed in at the beginning, and so we have a steady stream of it coming out at the end. If you put in 100 per minute at the beginning, then 5 hours later you'll get 100 per minute coming out at the end. You've just got some horrific latency. And if you ever have a jam because perhaps your stone bricks run out or just anything goes a bit weird, then it's going to take a very, very long time to get it working again. And so the answer to that is to use the other part of the spoilage mechanics, where if you make a thing out of something that is already largely spoiled, then the product that comes out on the other side is the same percentage spoiled as the ingredients that go in. And usually that's a little bit, it sort of goes the other way around, where you're trying to deal with something as quickly as possible so that the finished product, which lasts longer, has as much of its lifetime left as possible. However, in this case, we actually want the spoiled results, so this is different and interesting. And so, Mark has set up a system here where he makes his Cermit, and then it gets put into a chest here, and then there's a timer that waits for a large number of ticks. And when this one over here sees 5,600 ticks, this inserter will run, because that means that the Cermit in here has gone off almost completely. And I think we're nearly there, because that's 5. That's got to 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2, 1. Oh, and there it goes. It's been stuck into this machine. That means we then get the raw Cermite over here that is down to 1.4% of its freshness. And that means it's only a 4-minute spoilage time. And so this system works really, really well for producing the spoiled Cermite, or the Cermite in its actual finished state. It just seems that, unfortunately, we're getting through a lot more than we really have the capacity for here. We need to make the system a bit bigger with a slightly higher throughput. But it is a nice, clever, elegant system. I do quite like it. So it means we've got a lot of delays in there, though. It does mean these machines will only do one build of Cermite every 4 or 5 minutes, which isn't a great deal, and was why we have such a small amount coming out here. And so you can see here, once again, these machines are running. They're putting the Cermite into here. That's gradually decaying. And then in a minute and a mumble, it'll be passed through. A lot of these chests have got some raw Cermite in them that is gradually going off, and then in a few minutes they can then be unloaded by these inserters. And if we've got the numbers a little bit wrong, we end up putting in some more raw Cermite into these machines, and it does funny things with the timer on there. It's not the end of the world. It will all eventually go off, because in that case then it would only have an average of 2 minutes of expiry time, because if you stack up multiple pieces of a thing in the same stack, then the spoilage time is averaged between them. So it is eventually going to work, even if the numbers are a little bit out. However, Mark has built this up very nicely, and it does seem to be working. Just the problem is it's very, very slow, which is rather unfortunate. We had a thought that another possible way to do it would be to be continuously dumping the Cermite onto a really, really long belt that is so long that it takes 4 minutes to go from one end to the other. And then from there unload it into the assembly machines and turn it into the Cermite, or the raw Cermite. And yes, that would work. This system is more elegant, but also more problematic, I guess, because it struggles a little bit to produce the sort of quantities that we're actually hoping for here. The obvious answer to that is just make more of it, and there's no reason why we couldn't go copy, paste forever out in this direction, and then have a load more flowing out. We'll see whether we actually need to do that. We need to do something, though, because there is not enough Cermite coming out here. Maybe Mark has an idea. But over here, yeah, as you can see, we don't have enough coming through to keep us in the red crystals that we need, and we don't have enough coming out to keep the barrels being made. So it's a little bit problematic. Earlier I mentioned the rocket silos and the parts we need to make the rockets. Well, the magic glass is fairly straightforward. We saw this last week where we've got stone coming in, it's being made into magic glass. Lovely. What I should probably be doing here is putting in productivity modules into all of these machines, and then having 2, 3, 4 times as many down here, because we do seem to still have a shortage of stone, even though these belts are running absolutely flat out now because we've put in additional drills. So as you can see here from the jerkiness of these belts, we've got enough stone to fill all of these belts on the way out. It's just that's not enough magic glass coming through. So I think productivity modules would be a good idea here, but we'll see. We'll probably do that. So that's the magic glass. That's fairly easy. Rocket fuel was absolutely trivial because we can just pump light oil straight out of the river over here, which means over here we can just turn some of it into solid fuel and then some of it into rocket fuel, dump that onto the belts. We've got loads of rocket fuel. Rocket fuel is really, really easy. We may even end up exporting rocket fuel from this planet to other planets in the future. You never know, because it is just so easy to make it. So I threw this system together, apparently. Looks like it was me. and that has worked really, really nicely. It's just producing rocket fuel. It was a very, very easy build. Similarly, I've done the low density structures over here. We've got steel on the planet because it comes from the Cermite spoiling. We've got plastic on this planet because Mike made it as part of the red circuit production, so I'm stealing a bit of that, which means he probably doesn't have enough for his red circuit. So sorry about that. that, although looking at the belt, we do seem to have a decent quantity of red circuits available at the moment, so I'm only a little bit sorry. And then copper just comes straight out of thin air, which is amazing, and then that means we can make all of the low density structures we could possibly want. Great, that was nice and easy. Sophia has done the blue circuits just over here. These were relatively straightforward, I think. He is also stealing Mike's red circuits, so that's fine. There's also some additional green circuit production going on here. Apparently Tristan built this. I think maybe we just didn't have enough. Oh no, that is largely for these blue circuits over here. So again, that's going from the magic glass and copper recipe. They're being brought around and they're making blue circuits through the normal recipe. The only funny part of this, apart from, you know, magical green circuits, is that we're making the sulfuric acid in a slightly weird way. Sophia is making Cermit by bringing in bricks and oil, as we've seen before, and then it turns out Cermit can be combined with water and light oil to make sulfuric acid. And that's working, except that Sophia appears to have forgotten that Cermit spoils into steel. So there's some steel in this machine, which means it's stopped. There's some steel in this machine, which means it's confused. There's some steel in this machine. If we clear those out, like this, and this, and this, then I imagine the whole system is going to just start working again. We can make the Cermit, we can chuck it into the sulfuric acidizer over here in the middle here, and then we can start making a little bit of sulfuric acid from these machines as well. So as long as we can produce Cermit fast enough, we can get 5 in here before it goes off, then we can produce some sulfuric acid, it can go into the tank, and it can keep everything running. So yeah, that seems to be pretty good, but we do need to have a steel removal system on all of these machines, otherwise there's going to be shenanigans and problems. I don't expect that to be too difficult. It's probably just going to be inserters and purple chests, and if we move that up a couple of squares like that, and then it should work quite nicely. I do see that Sophia has got a control system working on these machines, so these should turn off when this tank gets fairly full, and that's presumably to try and stop the Cermit building up in these machines and then going off. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have worked because we've managed to have a little bit of overflow and there's been a little bit of Cermit in the machines, because this requires more than one Cermit in order to build the sulfuric acid. But I'm sure we'll fix that up in the next stream. I should also mention in passing that all of this production has required us to upgrade our inputs and our resources quite a bit as we're going through. Tristan has been working hard expanding the power supply, lots and lots of solar, lots and lots of battery packs. That's working really well. And similarly over here, extra battery packs for the copper production, where we've got more copper being pulled out of thin air. So previously I think we had one of these banks. We then doubled that because it wasn't enough, and then realised there's so much copper going into conductive brick production that we could kind of do with another 3 of those banks dedicated just to the conductive bricks, because they are really hungry. Looking here, we can see that these take 2 copper plate for every brick, but we have a lot of bricks running through. We're just using these up at a crazy speed. So yeah, Tristan's put in more copper production, more, and finally we do seem to have enough. Oh, apparently one of them was me as well. Our done list literally has copper plate expansion on it 4 times for 1, 2, 3, 4. Apparently one of them was me and the other 3 were Tristan. So yeah, that's been going quite well. And Tristan's also doubled the copper brick production, or the copper coated bricks, conductive bricks, whatever you want to call them, because we just straight up didn't have enough of those. Tristan and I have also both expanded the stone mining significantly over here, which is why, as I mentioned earlier, we now have enough stone coming through to keep all of these belts at least moving slightly jerkily like this. Perhaps that means it's time to put in a bigger balancer on the in here and have even more stone being passed over to magic glass production. But to be honest, I think productivity modules is probably a better way to do it. It may even use less power than putting in more and more of these big mining drills, because they're quite hungry. And we have currently 711 of them, which is frankly rather silly, but that's what you get when it's 20 times harder than normal to dig the stone out of the ground. I don't think we're going to have any shortages of stone for a while, with there being 10.6 billion in this patch. I think we're going to be alright for a while. Even the drills right on the end have still got 3,600 resources available to them, and they've got significant productivity bonuses and significant resource drain bonuses. So these are just generally we're going to get crazy amounts of resource out of these patches. And that brings you up to date with what we've been up to on Igrys. So I thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed that. There are a few more researches that we're going to get from this planet using the new mineral science packs, and there's some very exciting stuff in there, but since we haven't actually started building them yet, I don't think I'm quite ready to talk about them, but we'll see them in an upcoming video fairly soon, I'm sure. Once we've got all of those going and we're building everything we need out here, well, we'll need to do a bit of sorting out of all of the inputs, especially the Cermite, but then I think we're getting close to the point where we'll be finished on this planet and we'll be needing to decide where on Earth we should go next. There are lots of choices, of course, because we have lots of planets available to us. We're sort of sticking with the inner planets at the moment, so we could go to Meraxis or Tiber or Gleba, Cubium, Moschine, Rubia, Castor, Corundum, that sort of area. We're reckoning on doing the inner planets and then sort of pushing our way gradually outward, because we're under the impression that that'll give us a nice sort of gradual tech expansion, shall we say, and also a sort of gradual difficulty upgrading as well. So by the time we get out to Secretus and Aquilo and so on, it'd be nice to have all of the toys to make those planets a little bit more manageable. If you fancy trying your hand at this mod pack, then you can grab the Planetary Pioneers mod from the Factorio mod portal, drop that one in, it'll install all of the mods we're using, and then if you want, you can then remove it in order to fiddle with the quality of life mods as well. We'll be streaming again on Monday at 7:30 PM UK time. I shall also be back on Wednesday when I shall be streaming some more Foundry and continuing with my assembly lines and massive robot constructions and all that sort of stuff. And there'll be videos coming out Thursday and Friday as usual. So please make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of the exciting stuff that's going on here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.